Every single day, billions of meals around the world begin with something surprisingly simple. Not bread, not rice, a tortilla. Soft, flexible, made from just a handful of ingredients. Yet behind every tortilla lies a manufacturing process that has been perfected over more than 3 years. Today, corn tortillas are one of the most consumed foods on Earth. In Mexico alone, people eat an estimated 300 million tortillas every single day. That's more than 100 billion tortillas every year in just one country. Across North America, Central America, and increasingly around the world, tortillas have become an essential part of everyday life. They're wrapped around tacos, layered into enchiladas, fried into tortilla chips, used in quesadillas, tostadas, chilaquiles, and countless other dishes. But have you ever wondered how they're actually made? How can a factory produce 20 perfectly identical tortillas every single hour? How do millions of tiny corn kernels become soft, flexible discs in just a few hours? And why does a process invented thousands of years ago remain almost unchanged today? To answer those questions, we traveled inside a modern tortilla factory to uncover every step behind one of the world's most important foods. What we found wasn't just another food production line. It was a fascinating combination of ancient knowledge, modern engineering, and industrial precision. And believe it or not, everything begins with a single grain of corn. Long before factories existed, long before electricity, ancient civilizations in what is now Mexico discovered something extraordinary. They realized that simply grinding dried corn wasn't enough. The kernels remained hard, the dough cracked. The nutrients were difficult for the human body to absorb. For centuries, corn was already a staple crop, but it still had one major problem, until someone discovered a process that would completely change the future of food, a technique so effective that it's still used today in factories producing millions of tortillas. It's called nixtamalization. We'll come back to that remarkable process shortly. But first, we need to go where every tortilla truly begins, the cornfields. Across vast agricultural regions, fields of corn stretch as far as the eye can see. Some cover hundreds of hectares. Others extend for kilometers in every direction. Depending on the variety being grown, each corn plant takes between 90 and 180 days to complete its life cycle. During those months, every plant performs an incredible biological process. Using sunlight, water, carbon dioxide, and nutrients from the soil, it converts solar energy into starch. That starch is stored inside hundreds of kernels growing on each ear of corn. Those tiny kernels will eventually become tortillas eaten thousands of kilometers away. Growing corn at this scale is a remarkable challenge. Every field must receive the right amount of water. Too little, and the plants struggle to grow. Too much, and diseases can spread rapidly. Farmers constantly monitor soil conditions, weather forecasts, and crop health throughout the season. Modern agriculture even relies on drones and satellite imagery to detect problems long before they're visible from the ground. Because when you're feeding millions of people, every harvest matters. As summer comes to an end, the fields slowly begin to change. The bright green plants fade into shades of yellow and gold. The ears of corn dry naturally under the sun. Inside each kernel, moisture gradually drops to around 15%. That's the moment farmers have been waiting for. Because only then is the corn ready to harvest. And harvesting millions of kernels by hand? That would be almost impossible. Fortunately, modern agriculture has built one of the most impressive machines you'll ever see. A machine capable of replacing the work of hundreds of people in a single day. And it's about to transform an entire field of corn in just a matter of hours. When the corn finally reaches its ideal moisture level, there's only a limited window to harvest it. Wait too long, and weather, insects, or mold could damage the crop. Harvest too early, and the kernels contain too much moisture to be stored safely. Timing is everything. That's why, across thousands of acres, an army of agricultural machines begins moving through the fields almost non-stop. At first glance, they look enormous. But once they start working, their true engineering becomes even more impressive. These are combine harvesters, some of the most advanced farming machines ever built. In a single pass, a combine performs what once required dozens, sometimes hundreds of workers. It cuts through rows of corn, separates the ears from the stalks, removes the kernels, blows away leaves and plant debris, and stores thousands of kilograms of corn inside its onboard grain tank. All without stopping. Watching one in action is like seeing an entire factory moving across a field. Massive rotating mechanisms pull the corn plants inside. Hidden rollers strip the ears from the stalks. Powerful threshing systems knock every kernel loose. Then giant fans create carefully controlled air currents that separate the lightweight plant material from the much heavier grain. Within seconds, only clean kernels remain. The rest of the plant is chopped into tiny pieces and returned to the soil, where it eventually decomposes and helps nourish future crops. Nothing goes to waste. A modern combine can harvest dozens of tons of corn in a single day, depending on field conditions and crop yield. Just a century ago, achieving the same result would have required an entire workforce laboring from sunrise to sunset. Today, one operator sitting inside an air-conditioned cab, guided by GPS and sophisticated sensors, can accomplish the work in a fraction of the time. It's a remarkable example of how technology has transformed agriculture, but harvesting the corn is only the beginning. Once the grain tank is full, the combine unloads its cargo into waiting trucks. The transfer often happens while both vehicles are still moving. Without stopping, without wasting a single minute, every second counts during harvest season. Truck after truck leaves the fields carrying thousands of kilograms of freshly harvested corn. Their destination isn't a supermarket or a food factory. Not yet. First, the grain must be stored under carefully controlled conditions. Some storage facilities are so large they can hold tens of thousands of tons of corn at once. Towering silos dominate the landscape. Inside, sophisticated ventilation systems constantly circulate air to prevent moisture buildup. Temperature sensors monitor the grain around the clock, because if just one section becomes too warm, it can create the perfect environment for mold and spoil thousands of tons of perfectly good corn. From there, every shipment is carefully scheduled according to production demand. As tortilla factories prepare new batches, trucks begin transporting the grain to processing facilities. But before a single kernel enters production, it has to pass one final test: quality control. Every load is sampled immediately upon arrival. Technicians inspect the corn for moisture content, kernel size, hardness, starch concentration, color, and any signs of contamination. Some facilities even use high-speed optical scanners capable of examining thousands of kernels every second. Damaged kernels, discolored kernels, foreign materials, anything that does not meet strict standards is automatically rejected. Only the highest quality corn is allowed to continue, because when you are producing millions of tortillas every year, even the smallest inconsistency can affect the final product. But here is where the story becomes truly fascinating. Most people assume the next step is simply grinding the corn into flour. That would certainly be the fastest approach, but that is not how authentic corn tortillas are made. Instead, the corn is about to undergo a transformation discovered more than 3 years ago, a process so revolutionary that many historians consider it one of the greatest breakthroughs in the history of food. And incredibly, modern factories still rely on exactly the same principle today. At first glance, making tortillas seems incredibly simple. Take some corn, grind it into flour, add water, shape it, cook it. But if you have ever tried making tortillas from untreated dried corn, you will quickly discover that it does not work. The kernels remain hard, the dough becomes crumbly, The tortillas crack instead of bending. And perhaps most importantly, your body cannot fully absorb many of the nutrients locked inside the corn. Ancient civilizations discovered this problem thousands of years ago. But instead of accepting it, they solved it. Long before chemistry became a science, long before laboratories even existed, the Maya and Aztec civilizations developed a remarkable technique that completely transformed the way humans consumed corn. A process so revolutionary that it is still considered one of the greatest innovations in food history. It is called nixtamalization. And even today, every authentic corn tortilla begins exactly the same way. Inside the factory, enormous stainless steel cooking tanks stand ready. Each one can process thousands of kilograms of corn in a single batch. The cleaned kernels are loaded into the tanks, then water is added. Finally, workers introduce a surprisingly small ingredient, food-grade lime, also known as calcium hydroxide. Although it is called lime, it has nothing to do with the citrus fruit. Instead, it is a naturally occurring alkaline compound that has been used in food preparation for thousands of years. Only a small amount is needed. Yet without it, authentic corn tortillas simply would not exist. As the tanks begin heating, the water slowly approaches 90 degrees Celsius, or about 194 degrees Fahrenheit. The mixture is gently cooked for around 45 minutes. At first, nothing dramatic seems to happen, but inside every kernel, an extraordinary chemical transformation has already begun. The alkaline solution starts breaking down the tough outer skin of the corn. This protective layer, known as the pericarp, normally acts like armor. It is what makes dried corn so hard and difficult to process. As that outer layer softens, water begins penetrating deep into the kernel. The starches absorb moisture. The proteins begin changing their structure. The entire grain slowly becomes softer and more flexible. But that is only part of what makes nixtamalization so remarkable. Because this ancient process does not just improve texture. It actually changes the nutritional value of the corn itself. One of the biggest benefits is the release of niacin, also known as vitamin B3. In untreated corn, much of this essential nutrient is trapped inside the grain, making it difficult for the human body to absorb. Nixtamalization unlocks it. This simple discovery helped prevent nutritional deficiencies that once affected populations relying heavily on corn as a staple food. The process also increases calcium content, thanks to the food-grade lime, improves flavor, enhances aroma, creates a smoother dough, and gives tortillas the flexibility they are famous for. Without nixtamalization, a taco would crack apart the moment you tried to fold it. It is incredible to think that a process discovered over 3 millennia ago still outperforms many modern shortcuts, and that is why factories around the world continue using the same basic principle today. Because sometimes, the oldest solution is still the best one. Once the cooking stage is complete, the heat is turned off, but the process is not finished. In fact, one of the most important steps is just beginning. The corn remains inside the cooking liquid for another 8 hours. This resting period might seem excessive, but it is absolutely essential. During these hours, every kernel continues absorbing water slowly and evenly. Moisture reaches the center of the grain, the starches continue changing, the texture becomes increasingly soft. By the end of the soaking process, the kernels have almost doubled in tenderness compared to when they first entered the tanks. The transformation is remarkable. What was once a rock-hard grain has become soft enough to crush between your fingers, and it is finally ready for the next stage, washing. The cooking liquid is drained away. Powerful washing systems rinse the kernels several times to remove most of the loosened outer skin. But here is the important part. The factories do not wash away everything. If they removed every trace of the nixtamalization process, they would lose many of the benefits they worked so hard to create. Instead, they carefully balance the washing process, enough to remove unwanted residue. but not so much that the corn loses its distinctive flavor, aroma, and improved texture. Finding that balance is one of the keys to producing high-quality tortillas. And once the washing is complete, the corn no longer looks like ordinary dried grain. It has a new name, nixtamal. Soft, warm, perfectly hydrated, and ready for the next transformation, because in just a few moments, these softened kernels will disappear into enormous industrial mills and emerge as the smooth, elastic dough that will soon become thousands of perfectly round tortillas. After hours of cooking and soaking, the corn has been completely transformed. What was once a hard, dry kernel is now soft, hydrated, and packed with flavor. This is nixtamal, and now comes one of the most important moments in the entire production process, turning those softened kernels into dough. Because no matter how perfect the corn is, if the dough isn't perfect, neither are the tortillas. The nixtamal is transported directly to enormous industrial grinding machines. At first glance, these mills don't look particularly impressive, but inside, they're capable of processing thousands of kilograms of corn every hour with incredible precision. Heavy-duty steel grinding stones, or in some modern factories, specially engineered metal discs, rotate continuously under enormous pressure. As the corn passes between them, every kernel is crushed, not violently, but gradually. The goal isn't simply to grind the corn. It's to create an incredibly smooth, elastic dough with exactly the right texture. If the particles are too coarse, the tortillas will feel grainy, too fine, and they'll lose their structure during cooking. Finding the perfect balance is one of the biggest challenges in tortilla production. As the nixtamal moves through the grinding system, something remarkable happens. The kernels disappear completely. In their place emerges a thick, warm dough known in Mexico simply as masa. It's soft, flexible, moist, and already carries the unmistakable aroma of freshly prepared corn. This dough is the heart of every authentic tortilla. But the factory doesn't stop there. Freshly ground masa isn't immediately sent to production. First, it enters large industrial mixers. These machines continuously knead the dough, ensuring that every gram has exactly the same consistency. Imagine trying to make millions of tortillas with dough that's slightly wetter in one batch and slightly drier in the next. The results would be disastrous. Some tortillas would crack. Others would stick to the machinery. Some might puff perfectly. Others wouldn't puff at all. That's why modern factories rely on constant monitoring. Electronic sensors continuously measure temperature, moisture, and dough consistency. Every few seconds, computers analyze the data. If the dough begins drying out, tiny adjustments are made automatically. If the moisture level becomes too high, corrections are made immediately. Even a difference of just 1 or 2% can completely change how the tortilla behaves inside the oven. At this scale, precision isn't optional. It's essential. Once the dough reaches the perfect consistency, it begins moving through enclosed stainless steel conveyors toward one of the fastest production lines in the entire food industry. This is where speed meets precision. Large automatic feeders distribute the masa evenly across rotating production equipment. The movement never stops. The dough flows continuously like an endless river. Then, in a fraction of a second, the presses begin their work. Powerful rotating dies gently compress portions of dough into perfectly round discs. Every tortilla has exactly the same diameter, the same thickness, the same weight, the same shape, again and again and again. Watching the process is almost hypnotic. Thousands of tortillas appear every hour with almost impossible precision. A task that would take skilled tortilla makers hours to complete by hand happens here in seconds. Yet, despite all the automation, the factory is still following the same basic principles that have existed for centuries. Take corn, transform it into masa, shape it, cook it. Only now, Modern engineering has made it possible to repeat that process tens of thousands of times every single hour. Of course, no manufacturing process is completely waste-free. As each tortilla is formed, tiny scraps of excess dough remain around the edges. Rather than throwing them away, the factory immediately collects every fragment. Large rollers continuously recover the excess masa and feed it back into the production system. Within moments, it becomes part of the next batch of tortillas. Nothing is wasted. Everything is reused. It's a simple idea, but across millions of tortillas every year, it saves enormous amounts of raw material. Now the tortillas are perfectly shaped, but they're still just raw dough, soft, fragile, and impossible to eat. Everything changes in the next 21 seconds, because the moment these freshly pressed tortillas enter the oven, they undergo one final transformation. Water trapped inside the dough suddenly turns into steam. The tortillas begin to rise, and if everything has been done correctly, each one will inflate like a balloon, a tiny moment that tortilla makers have relied on for generations, because to experts, a tortilla that puffs is the unmistakable sign of a tortilla made exactly right. At this point, the tortillas look complete. They are perfectly round, perfectly shaped, perfectly uniform, but they are still nothing more than soft, uncooked dough. They cannot be folded, they cannot be stacked, and they certainly cannot survive being turned into a taco. Everything depends on what happens next, because in less than half a minute, these fragile discs of masa will become fully cooked tortillas. The freshly pressed tortillas travel directly into one of the fastest baking systems in the food industry. Unlike a traditional oven, this one stretches across dozens of meters and is divided into multiple heating zones. From the outside, it looks like a giant steel tunnel. Inside, it is a carefully controlled environment where temperature, humidity, and cooking time are constantly monitored. Every tortilla enters at exactly the same speed. There are no pauses, no interruptions, just an endless stream of dough moving steadily through the oven. And once inside, the clock starts ticking. The entire cooking process lasts just 21 seconds. That is all the time needed to transform raw masa into a finished tortilla. But those 21 seconds are divided into several carefully engineered stages. Instead of cooking on a single conveyor belt, the tortillas move through 3 different levels. Each level has its own purpose. The lower conveyor operates at a lower temperature. The middle section becomes progressively hotter, and the upper level reaches temperatures of more than 250 degrees Celsius, or nearly 480 degrees Fahrenheit. This gradual increase in heat is essential. If the tortillas were exposed to maximum heat immediately, the outside would burn before the inside had time to cook. Instead, they bake in stages. First, one side begins to cook. Then the tortilla flips. The second side cooks. Finally, both surfaces receive one last intense burst of heat. The process is incredibly fast, yet every second has been carefully calculated. As the tortillas move through the oven, something extraordinary begins happening inside. Although it is not immediately visible from the outside, the water trapped within the dough is heating rapidly. Soon, it reaches its boiling point. Steam begins forming between the 2 outer layers of the tortilla. Pressure builds, and then the tortilla suddenly inflates, almost like a balloon. For just a brief moment, each tortilla puffs up before settling back down as it leaves the oven. To most people, it might look like a simple effect, but to tortilla makers, it's one of the clearest signs that everything has gone exactly as planned. A tortilla that puffs evenly usually has the right moisture content, the right dough consistency, the right cooking temperature, and the right baking time. If it doesn't inflate, something may have gone wrong somewhere earlier in the process. Perhaps the dough was too dry. Perhaps it contained too much moisture. Perhaps the cooking temperature wasn't quite right. That tiny puff tells an experienced operator more than almost any sensor can. It's a tradition that's been used for generations. Even in today's automated factories, as the tortillas leave the final heating zone, they're fully cooked, soft, flexible, and carrying the unmistakable aroma of freshly baked corn. But despite looking finished, they're still far too hot to package. Fresh out of the oven, each tortilla continues releasing steam. If it were sealed immediately inside a plastic bag, that trapped moisture would condense into water droplets. Those droplets could make the tortillas soggy, reduce their shelf life, and affect their texture. So instead of heading straight to packaging, the tortillas begin one final journey: cooling. Long cooling tunnels stretch across the factory floor. Powerful fans circulate carefully controlled streams of air around every tortilla. The goal isn't to cool them as quickly as possible. It's to cool them gradually. Too much airflow, and they begin drying out. Too little, and excess moisture remains trapped inside. Finding the perfect balance ensures the tortillas stay soft and flexible for days after packaging. By the time they leave the cooling tunnels, they've reached the ideal temperature. Warm enough to remain pliable, cool enough to be packaged safely. They're almost ready to leave the factory. But first, every single tortilla must pass one final inspection, because producing 20 tortillas every hour means nothing if even a small percentage fail to meet the factory's quality standards. By the time the tortillas leave the cooling tunnels, they look finished. Golden, soft, perfectly round. But inside the factory, looking good isn't good enough. When you're producing 20 tortillas every single hour, even a tiny defect can become thousands of imperfect products before anyone notices. That's why every tortilla must pass one final challenge: quality control. As the tortillas travel along the conveyor belts, they pass beneath an array of high-speed cameras. These are not ordinary cameras. They are industrial vision systems capable of analyzing thousands of tortillas every minute. Each image is processed almost instantly. The software measures the diameter of every tortilla, its thickness, its shape, its color. Even tiny cracks or bubbles that would be almost impossible for the human eye to spot at full production speed. If a tortilla is slightly too dark, rejected. Too pale, rejected. Too small. Too large, misshapen, torn, folded. Anything that does not meet the factory's strict standards is automatically removed from the production line, without stopping production for even a second. It is a remarkable example of modern automation. Machines inspecting food at speeds no human could ever match. Yet despite all this technology, human experience still plays an essential role. Operators continuously monitor the production line. They watch the color of the tortillas, the consistency of the dough, the way each tortilla inflates inside the oven. Sometimes, experienced workers can identify a developing problem long before a computer triggers an alarm. It is the perfect combination of technology and human expertise. Once the tortillas pass inspection, they continue toward one of the most satisfying parts of the entire process: stacking. Instead of arriving in neat piles, the tortillas leave the oven in one continuous stream. The factory now has to organize thousands of individual tortillas into perfectly counted packages. Special guide rails gently separate them into single-file lines. One by one, the tortillas slide into precisely machined channels. Electronic sensors begin counting. 1, 2, 3, until the exact number is reached. In this factory, that is 40 tortillas per package. The moment tortilla number 40 passes the sensor, a trapdoor instantly beneath the stack, the entire pile drops smoothly onto the packaging conveyor below. Then the process immediately starts again. 40 more, and another 40, again and again, thousands of times every single day. The precision is astonishing. Every package contains exactly the same number, without anyone having to count them by hand. Next comes packaging, one of the final steps before the tortillas begin their journey to stores and restaurants. Automatic bagging machines wrap each stack inside specially designed plastic packaging. These bags are not chosen at random. They are engineered to help maintain freshness, protect the tortillas from contamination, and preserve the ideal level of moisture. Too much airflow, the tortillas dry out. Too little, condensation can develop inside the bag. Every detail matters. As each package is sealed, printers immediately apply important information: production date, batch number, expiration date. These codes allow every package to be traced back through the entire manufacturing process if necessary. It is an essential part of modern food safety. The finished packages continue toward the end of the production line. There, workers perform one final inspection before placing them into shipping boxes. Although robots and automated systems handle much of the work, people still play a crucial role. They verify packaging quality, remove any damaged products, and ensure every box is ready for transport. Once sealed, the boxes move onto pallets. Forklifts carry them into enormous distribution warehouses. From here, refrigerated and climate-controlled trucks transport them across cities, regions, and even international borders. Within hours, many of these tortillas will already be sitting on supermarket shelves. Others will arrive at restaurants, food trucks, traditional tortillerias, or local grocery stores, ready to become tacos, quesadillas, enchiladas, or countless other dishes enjoyed by millions of people every day. The scale of this operation is almost difficult to comprehend. This single factory can produce 20 tortillas every hour. That is hundreds of thousands every day, millions every month, and hundreds of millions of tortillas every year. Yet, despite all the robotics, the conveyor belts, the sensors, the industrial ovens, and the advanced automation, the heart of the process has not really changed. It still relies on an incredible discovery made more than 3,000 years ago. A simple combination of corn, water, and lime, an ancient innovation that continues to feed millions of people every single day. And perhaps that is the most fascinating part of all. One of the world's most modern food factories still depends on knowledge passed down through countless generations. Proof that sometimes the greatest technological breakthroughs are not always new. Sometimes they are simply perfected. If you enjoyed discovering how one of the world's most important foods is made, make sure to subscribe to Source Code for more fascinating journeys inside the factories, technologies, and engineering that shape our everyday lives. Because behind the products we use every day, there's always an incredible story waiting to be discovered. We'll see you in the next one.